What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Highlighted Business Podcast for business people. And today I've got one of the most excellent business financial minds that I know. This guy, he knows way too much about me. You know, I've talked about the barbecue restaurant that I had before High Beam Marketing way too many times on this podcast. And Rick was there. Our guest today was there from day one, pretty much. I mean, Rick knows me going all the way back to 19, so he has way too much information. But from the financial barbecue side of things, he knew. He was there the whole time and saw what we did and where we crashed. And today we're going to get into all of that. And today we're sharing the highlight with Rick Parsons from the Financialist LLC. Rick, how are you doing today, man? Thanks for coming on.
Doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So just give everybody like a quick overview of who you are and how in the world you got into doing what you're doing.
So I'm what's considered a fractional CFO. That's kind of a relatively new term. I didn't even call myself that until maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But the idea was I was transitioning out of a family business that I was CFO of, and I had 10 or 15 hours a week, and I wanted to help other small businesses. I didn't want to go back into the corporate world and work for a big company. So kind of just started doing this on my own and took on a few clients, and that just sort of grew as the family businesses wound down. And so now it's a full-time, very adventurous gig is probably a good way to say it. Work with a lot of different people, a lot of different industries. So fractional CFO is the technical term. I work more with businesses on a profitability, financial statement type of arrangement rather than the traditional tax audit kind of angle of things. So I think of myself as a small business owner, and I work with small business owners.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's how we met because you were coaching or teaching one of the Ramsey Solutions FPU classes, but then we stayed friends. And then when I came back from the Air Force and started my business, and I knew how to sell barbecue. I knew how to make barbecue, and I knew nothing about finances for a small business. And later on, I learned, the SBA says the number one reason that small businesses close in America is due to cash flow issues. And we talk about that from a marketing standpoint all the time, where it's like, if you're not very diligent about where you're spending your cash and it's not coming back at a decent, what we call return on ad spend, ROAS, then you're going to go out of business quickly because your cash is just disappearing left and right. But you're getting even upstream of that and saying, of all the activities you're doing, this is the cash that you're producing. And profitability does not equal cash in the bank necessarily, and all the things. So you and we got together when I was just a tent on the side of the road with my family. And I remember you got to tell the story. Here's what I want to frame. All right. There's hope for everybody out there listening, because when I brought Rick my first set of books, he was the nicest guy in the world and really taught me a lot and walked through it with me and was not judgmental too much and gave me the appropriate amount of a hard time. But there's hope for anybody in this story. So, when we first set up our books, my aunt, who was an accountant or something like 30 years ago, crazy, she went in and set everything up for us. And so when you got our books for the first time, explain how big of a mess it actually was.
It was just way too detailed. So, and I still tell this story to people when we talk about a chart of accounts. So people that are business owners understand what a chart of accounts is if they have any, real input in their accounting. Your chart of accounts for this it was a food truck.
It was a tent on the side of the road. I think we did 80,000 maybe. No, like 68,000 in revenue that first year.
Yeah. So I think you had 667 individual accounts. and I start tearing into your chart of accounts. And normally I start with cash. If you can't get cash right, none of the rest really matters. But the other thing I look at is chart of accounts just to see what the structure, what the system is, what's been started. And this wasn't your fault. It was, whoever set it up. But, you had plastic forks as an account, plastic spoons as an account, plastic knives as an account, plastic forks catering as an account. So it was just information overkill. And I thought, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? And there's no way as a business owner that you could, a financial statement, all it is a series of transactions. The more accounts you have, the more cluttered your financial statements look.
Yeah.
And, she thought she was doing the right thing by really breaking down your costs. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why people do it, but when you're first starting out and kind of getting going, you need things to be simple. You don't need that level of detail. That level of detail comes, you become a two, three, four, five, $10 million company. It totally makes sense. You
Yeah.
add to it, but at first you want to start simple.
Yeah.
I use that as an example for people that I'm onboarding. We're looking at chart of accounts. Like, let me tell you about this thing that I did a long time ago.
I'm glad.
Um,
I'm glad I
so
could be your opening story for your book
yeah,
someday when you write how to do small business accounting and succeed. You can start with, hey, if this moron can do it, you can do it. I'm glad I could be that guy
yep,
for you. That's hilarious. Yeah,
yeah,
it was it reminds me of what we tell people nowadays, where data should inform your decisions, not drive them. And there's a such thing as too much data depending on the size of your business. So like you just said, if you're a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar firm, being that level of detailed makes a lot of sense, because making decisions on plastic fork suppliers in the restaurant business analogy here makes a lot of sense. You can save serious money depending on what that data is telling you. But when you're buying, on a $70,000 a year revenue business that first year, I think we were probably buying total for cost of goods, maybe 5,000-6,000 in paper product, maybe 10,000. Like, it wasn't a lot. So we're talking about all this admin time and tracking all this data for no reason, because you're going to, like, even if you made better decisions, quote unquote, you're going to save maybe $1,000, maybe. And so is your time really better spent on trying to, what's the old saying? Step over the dollar to pick up the dime, right? Like, it's just not a good way to be. But it's a testament to how good of a fractional CFO you are, and a teacher and a friend, because you walked with us the entire time we were in business, and from that little $70,000 a year business to $1 million P&L and thousands of transactions after the fact. When I think about the thousands of transactions we did just a few years after that, had I had to break those down at that level, like, I would have lost my mind. So I do
yeah.
appreciate all the guidance you gave me back in the day, because you definitely helped us stay in business as long as we did. Because restaurants are finicky, man. They're tough to keep open, and you're one of the main reasons I credit for us doing as well as we did. So I don't know if I've ever told you that, but thank you. That was a big
I
appreciation on
appreciate
my
I
end.
appreciate the kind words.
Yeah. So that's a good transition here, though, to the next thing, which is, like, you're in and out of a ton of businesses all the time. Like, what are the 3, 4, 5 things, however many it is? I'm sure we could get as detailed as we want here, but, like, when you're first meeting with people that are maybe not used to working with somebody at your level, or they've grown their business and this is the first time they're taking their accounting stuff seriously and using it as a lever to improve their business in the long run. Like, what are the big things that you're teaching them in those early days that are issues that maybe we can get them on the podcast and they'll be fixed before they even come to you now?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the first thing I do is look at cash and try to make sure that's reconciled. I think it's really important for the business owner to know how much money do you really have. I see a lot of business owners, they go every day to the bank account. They log into their bank and say, "This is how much money I have." Well, we kind of all know, if the bank says you've got $80,000, but you've written a check for 50, the bank doesn't know about the 50 yet. You don't have $80,000. So to me, the accounting system, it's, back to that data, it gives you information that you need to do things. So I get cash right. I look at the system. I look at the balance sheet. I may have had people come in and, slide a balance sheet across the table. They have negative inventory. I go, that's not possible. You can't
Yeah.
have negative inventory. So, as much as anything, looking at the balance sheet and the P&L chart of accounts, it gives me a pretty good feel for what does this person understand about this whole thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I get it. If you're a jewelry maker, you go into business to make jewelry. You're not
Mm-hmm.
thinking about all the other stuff. You're like, I'm really good at jewelry, so I'm gonna open a jewelry shop. It doesn't mean you're going to be successful. It means you know how to make jewelry. But
Mm-hmm.
um, so
Oh, we talk
to
about that all the time. The E-Myth Revisited is one of my favorite books by Michael Gerber. Have you read that before? I don't know
I
if you've
haven't
talked
read
about
that
that.
one. No,
It's
haven't read that
great. I
one.
mean, but it talks about how everybody that starts a business has three people inside of them. They have the technician, which is what you're describing, the jewelry maker who's really good at making the jewelry, doing the thing. And maybe they worked for somebody and then they sort of get this, what he called like an entrepreneurial fit, where he basically just, like, you have a seizure and you just go start your own business because you're like, I can go do it better than the guy or girl I work for.
Yeah.
And then you have these other two people that are inside of you, the manager, which is the person that makes sure the thing runs on time and all the things get done. And then the actual entrepreneur itself, which is the sort of visionary, big picture thinker person. And I tell people all the time when they ask me, like, they know I've started a couple businesses now, and they're like, I want to do my own thing. I want to get started. Like, the first piece of advice I tell them is, whatever the thing is you're passionate about doing, that's not your job very, very quickly after you start a business. Your new job is being business owner, and that should be the goal you're growing towards. And I think one of the things, the skill sets, marketing is what we talk to people about, but yeah, finances for sure is another skill set you have to develop as a business owner.
It is. And when you're a business owner, especially a small business, this from starting, the tent, the food truck, the small restaurant next to the gas station to the bigger, you wear a lot of hats,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife's a business coach for an SBA organization, and she wrote a thing about, there's a difference between working on your business and working in your business. And a lot of business owners, at first they're working on it, but then they get where they're working in it, and they never really look at their business. They just get so caught up in the minutia. But
Yeah.
when you're the owner, you're wearing all the hats. You're wearing the marketing hat, you're wearing the accounting hat, you're wearing the cash hat, you're wearing the technical hat, you're wearing all those hats, and you
Mm-hmm.
have a finite amount of time in a day. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, I see the stress, and I hear it in the voices of people that are kind of starting out, or even if they got $1 million or $2 million company.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people you work with, maybe they're 100 or 200,000, and you can just hear it in their voice, like, if you multiply the stress level times 10 to go from 100,000 to 1 million, this person's in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to figure out how to condense all that down, where if you're wearing the different hats, that's fine. But you can't spend all your time wearing the technical hat, all your time wearing the marketing hat, all your time wearing the financial hat. You've got to switch them out, and you got to do it fairly quickly. It's rapid
Mm-hmm.
fire. There's nobody out there that's going to save you if you
Mm-hmm.
don't do well.
Yeah.
You can go to the bank and say, please let me borrow money. That ain't the answer.
Well, that's a short-term solution for what is it? It's treating the symptom and not the disease itself, right? And the
Yep.
disease is that you either don't have the knowledge that you need to be able to go execute at the level your business needs you to execute at to grow and be successful, or you don't have the right people around you that are able to go out and do that, which is why I love the fractional CFO model that you guys have over there, because the fraction, I mean, back to the actual title itself, for a fraction of the cost of what it costs to bring in a full-time CFO. Because if you're I don't know, sub $10 million business, I don't know if you necessarily need a full-time CFO. I guess it depends on a number of factors, but for the most businesses out there, they need that part-time person that's going to be able to come in there, bring the excellence, bring the advice and the information. And I mean, that's what we do as a marketing agency. I guess we're a fractional chief marketing officer for your organization, right?
Yep. Yep.
But talk to me about people that are going, hey, like, what I'm doing is fine. Like, it's okay. I'm surviving. Like, my accountant yells at me for a couple minutes, but whatever, like, we get over it. My taxes get filed every year, and we do okay. The thought of expense or spending an expense on a fractional CFO, like, why is that valuable for somebody versus just continuing to operate in the status quo? Like, let's say it's just okay for them, right? Like, what do you tell people that are afraid to commit to that investment?
Um, I've had people that I've onboarded, and they've said, this is another restaurant. He's got 7 restaurants and doing $4.5 to $5 million a year. And we sat down to go through, and he'd never really done anything. And he said, I've always viewed accounting as a luxury. And
Mm,
I made him sit here and go through things with me to understand that process, because I need the person I'm working with to understand it. This isn't just a deal where, hey, you pay me a bunch of money to do your stuff. I need you to understand it, because what we're doing is going to allow you to make good decisions and improve your business. And that's the whole point of doing it.
hmm
So I think from a cost side, I've always taken the approach, especially at first, I want to help. I want to help that business save enough money in areas that I bring up and we talk about to pay for me.
hmm
So maybe the upfront cost is $5,000 to onboard, but I
Hmm.
want to try to save you $5,000. Like I want to pay for myself at
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
But I think there are people in certain areas of the business world, they don't view accounting as anything that has any value at all.
Mm.
They do accounting to do a tax returns, what they do it for. They don't do
Hmm.
accounting to help them understand their business.
Yeah.
And so I pretty quickly lay that foundation. I'm not a yes man. I'm not just going to agree with what you say. I'm going to say stuff that makes you uncomfortable. I'm going to
Hmm.
say stuff that makes you not like me. But I feel like that's my role. And if you don't like me and we part ways, so be it.
Yeah. At
But
least you
I
can like go
think,
to sleep at night knowing that you did you
yeah,
tried to do the right thing or what you thought was the right thing. And if they're not going to
yes,
take it, they're not going to take it. There's nothing you can do about that, right?
yeah, exactly. And there are people out there that run businesses that they have a very different viewpoint of what makes a business successful.
Mm.
And I'm not going to change their mind on those things at all. But through enough conversation and just interaction, you're really getting that true CFO experience. If you're a $10 million company, the guy that, the owner of that company's grown it from 500,000 to 10 million, he's going to go into the office of his CFO and sit down and they're going to have a really frank conversation about this is the way things need to be. And he's expecting that person to interact with him and tell him what he needs to hear and not just go along with it like a rank and file employee. So I
Yeah.
try to offer that to the people that I work with that they can't afford it otherwise. They
Yeah.
can afford $5,000 a year. They can't afford $150,000 a year. And
Yeah.
so,
What's funny is that of the I think there's 35 million small businesses in America. And I believe 82 to 85% are actually single operators. And something
yeah,
you said in there made me think about this, where it's like, if you ever want to get to where you're not just a single operator and your ambition is to actually grow a team, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people, and to go from, a couple $100,000 to that sort of magical $1 million plus number and get over 5 years old and all the metrics that we see for business success. Like, I think at some point you have to start acting like those other businesses. Like, I've heard somebody say before, success leaves clues. And if you're looking at somebody that owns a $10 million business and let's say they have a full-time CFO, well, then you have to reverse engineer that and go, okay, I obviously can't afford a full-time CFO. I can't afford a full-time chief marketing officer, but what can I do at this level? And it's like coming out and paying for somebody like you to, even for an hourly thing, even if it's not you, but somebody else, just once a quarter or something, is still better than nothing, because you have somebody like you has so much information from looking at so many different P&Ls that you're able to connect dots that person in their lane can't necessarily even see yet. And I don't know, like, I want to go back to the accounting as a luxury thing. Like, explain to a person who's a single operator like that, like, why they should build the habits and the good foundation of accounting early versus waiting until they're working with you and you're spending a lot of hours unpacking and unwinding and fixing cash accounts and all the horror stories that you and I have had many conversations about over the years.
well, to go back to that guy, he really brought me in because he was undergoing a sales tax audit and he had
Mm,
no information at all.
yeah.
And so he got a bill from the state for $24,000,
Mm,
and he didn't have $24,000. So he calls and says, "Hey," and we'd talked, um, and so, but for me to, well, first thing, I saved him probably 12 or 13,000 on that audit just by getting his returns right, taking
mm,
information that was available. I saved him 12,000 just right off the top. So it more than paid for my initial consultation and doing all that. And I think as time went on, he started to understand what we were doing. At first, he had no clue. I made him
mm,
sit here and go through transactions with me and do things. And he made the comment, "It feels like we're going from 0 to 95." And I said, "Well, why are you at zero to begin with? You're a
mm,
$4.5 million company. There's no reason for you to be at zero. You should already
mm,
be at 80. Like, even if
mm,
you're just kind of getting through it, you
mm,
should be somewhere, you should be at 70, if nothing else." So it was a drinking from the fire hose moment from him. I threw a ton of stuff at him, but he was a $4.5 5 million company that he was in trouble. you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so, yeah, I tried to save him the money on the front end to pay for me to some extent. But I think it just takes time with most people, especially at a higher level, or they've got a higher top line. It just takes a
Mm-hmm.
while for them to really understand everything that's involved, and that it's in their best interest. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I've never stepped into a new relationship with a new client and just said, "Get out of my way, pay me my money, and I'll do the work."
Mm-hmm.
That is not the idea. Um,
Yeah.
and they're not trusting of that at first, and I don't blame someone. Someone new comes into your world, you're very distrustful at first. It just takes a while to develop that relationship. So there's a lot of hand holding and a lot of just talking through, just having conversations that leads eventually to an understanding of what really needs to happen. An attorney friend of mine said accounting is the language of business. I had never really thought of it like that. But
Mm-hmm.
most accounting people, they're like, just give me the stuff, give me the box and let me do my work. And they're not going to show anybody how to do anything because it means less work for them. I view a successful story as a business owner works with me and eventually they're big enough they don't need me anymore.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and for you it's probably kind of the same thing. You're working with a company and eventually they get big enough and they need you full time and you're like,
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to work for you full time. you
Right.
know I, I I'll help you. I'll help you hire somebody, get somebody trained, get them to understand the system and the process that we did.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to be your full-time chief marketing. I don't want to be anybody's full-time CFO. That's why I
Yeah.
do what I do.
Yeah, it's exactly right. We look at it in stages. So from what we call the wantrepreneur, somebody that has tendencies and wants to get into owning their own business someday, all the way up to, I think it's like, for us usually it's $500,000 a year in revenue before we'll really consider working with you, because you just don't have enough money at that point to invest in marketing, because it's like investing in the stock market. It takes time and consistency to build
Yep.
that return. So what we do is we put podcasts out, and we're constantly putting information out on the internet. We're trying to educate you and we're doing our own marketing. Really, we're trying to build some level of trust with you before you're ready for our services. You may be ready for them at $250,000 a year, but you're not ready to pay for them yet. And so you got to keep doing and learning on your own, so that when you're ready to bring us on as that fractional chief marketing officer, like, you can, you're going to have much better conversations with us as a marketing or as a business owner, because you've grown the business to that level, and so you know it, and it's not just an accident. You've actually like built the skill set of a marketer, and now you're just ready to delegate that hat, like you were talking about earlier, to someone else. And then, yeah, we take people all the way up, usually to about the $10 million tends to be the high end of the range from the chief marketing officer standpoint. We do some other things where we're essentially like we're like paid media teams for people, and we help them do specific aspects of their marketing plan. But as far as coming alongside you and being the actual marketing team that you have, yeah, $10 million. Then you go out and you hire your own thing, and it's a bittersweet day for us, because yeah, we love working with you and we loved having you as a client, but then all of a sudden you've outgrown us. And so it's great to see you get to that level. And it's just a testament to the work that you do and the work that we do, that our clients do eventually get to that point and go to the next level. Because I think if we're not doing our job, then they're not actually getting to that graduation stage, and going to the next level. It doesn't have to be forever. It's just for right now, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I never view this. I don't view this as a full-time job with one person. I've never done that. It's not my goal. So, which
Hmm.
is why I do what I do. So,
Yeah. So I know your book of business is pretty full right now. You might have room for one or two more people at any time, depending on the time of year. But when, let's say that I'm not able to get with you, but I'm going to go call somebody else that calls himself a fractional CFO. What are some of the characteristics that I should be looking for as a business owner in that new? I mean, really, they're a business partner, because they're going to know the really intimate details of your business. The P&L and the balance sheet are very intimate things to a business owner. They care a lot about them, and
yep.
you got to be able to trust that person. So what should I be asking, looking for, et cetera, when I'm looking to bring somebody on like you?
I think, working with, if you're working with a physician or someone for psychiatric help or marketing or financial, whatever it is, it really is about just it's almost an interview, right? Do we have a good rapport? Do we get along? Does it feel like a natural, organic relationship? So I think as much as the technical part, it's just getting to know that person and do I trust them? Red flags to me would be the person on the other end doesn't doesn't want you to understand what they do at all.
Mm-hmm.
That they're just like I said, give me the box and let me do my work. I think that they're available is a big one. There are a lot of people out there that you'll call, try to set up an appointment, and it's a week later before they call you back. Or you're going through layers of people to get to them. Those are probably people that either they're too busy or they just their heart isn't in it the right way. They're not in it for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I would avoid those kind of people. I think it's as much looking for red flags. If you don't see any red flags, okay, let's see where we can go. It's interesting working with business owners because you're right. The P&L and the balance sheet, those are very proprietary to those people. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they don't, there could be key employees. They don't know any of that stuff. You know, they don't know the debt level. They don't know anything. They
Mm-hmm.
know how to do their little piece, which which makes sense. We're all very private with our financial information, but in order to really be successful, you have to be able to trust somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just finding that person that feels like they've got a good heart, maybe they've got a good reputation. Like I would go with someone that like, oh, I've worked with so and so. That's a person you want to talk to, and not just cold call or find. If you Googled fractional CFO, I don't think I'd go talk to them. I think I'd be
Right.
like, hey, I know this other business owner. Who do you use? What do you do? What's your interaction? What's your feedback? And kind of go from there. I will say I don't think there's a lot of people that do what I do. I think the
Mm-hmm.
vast majority of accounting is more in the CPA firm kind of realm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and from my working with different tax people, I don't think you really get a lot of interaction on your operational stuff at all. You're
Yeah.
like, they do your tax return. That's it. They don't really want to do what I do. That's not what they're good at. They're good at taxes. That's a full-time thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to do tax returns. And tax people don't want to do what I do. They don't want to help with P&L and balance sheet. They'll do it sometimes
Mm-hmm.
because it's maybe a big client, it's a good revenue source, or it's a friend of a partner, whatever. But by and large, that's just not their thing. So you've got that real high level great tax advice person, and you got that real low level. Oh, my neighbor's grandmother used to do bookkeeping for this manufacturing company for 30 years, so I'll hire her because
Mm-hmm.
she's only $15 an hour. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's finding that middle ground, and it's hard. I think you got to just
Yeah.
talk to a lot of different people.
You get what you pay for, right? And as soon as you started talking
You
there, I
do.
was like, yeah, well, that was how we started. We knew somebody that said they knew accounting, and that's how we ended up with 667 different accounts in our chart of account book.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't malicious. Like she wasn't trying to set you off on the wrong path. She wasn't trying to do that. She was trying to give you a ton of information, but
Mm-hmm.
her experience may have been in
Yeah,
for a big firm, and they just had a
exactly
lot
right.
of accounts.
I think what you
So
said
that
there
was
was
what she
really
knew.
interesting to me. The you have the accountants that are doing like your major tax and all that stuff, and that's right. And then you also have like the sort of stereotypical bookkeeper. Like I've seen a lot of people out there that do bookkeeping work, but that's really more tactical. They're not really talking to you at a strategic level. So what you're describing here is exactly what people need, and they don't know it necessarily, I think, as a small business owner. Because I didn't realize that was what I needed until you and I got very lucky that I knew you. And fractional CFO has become a real popular term nowadays because I see it all over LinkedIn and a bunch of people saying that that's what they do and yada yada. But back, 5, 6, 7 years ago when you and I started talking professional outside of the friendship that we had, I got very lucky that I knew you because I didn't know what I needed. And then back to what I said at the beginning of the interview, having your expertise to be like, hey man, from an admin standpoint, you don't need 600 something accounts for chart of accounts. And then also like you got to make more money because your profitability sucks. So get on the stick. I remember us having that conversation very vividly where I was like, all right, well, let me go figure this out. Now I did end up in a gas station on the side of the road. So I don't know if I took the advice the 100% right way, but we grew every single year. And I think one of the reasons we grew, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but definitely one of the reasons we grew is that we had the right people around us at the right times. And you as a fractional CFO for us really helped us out. When we met at a quarterly rate at that time, and it was like, you were like, hey, here's where we're going, here's where you've been, and here's some things you need to think about. And I think back to what you said earlier about stepping out of the business and not making barbecue every single day. And I started working on the business when we had those meetings together. That was really helpful for me, just being able to go, okay, yeah, we need to look at growing. Like, I remember sometimes as an entrepreneur and a visionary type, stereotypical type entrepreneur, right? There's different types of entrepreneurs, and I'm definitely in the like big idea bucket guy. And I would come to you with different ideas where I was like, hey, I think I'm going to open a mall food court location. And I remember you being like, I don't think you should do that. And then I did it anyways. And then guess who was right in that conversation, Rick? It was you. You were right. You
Yeah.
were the right person. And I should have listened, and I didn't. And so I think had I actually listened to my advisors around me, even more so than I did. And I'm the type of guy that's always had to touch the stove, see if it's hot before if I believe how hot it actually is. Cause maybe you're just a wuss. Maybe I can handle the heat of the stove, and that's just a stupid way to live. And so I've hopefully grown at this point. But yeah, I mean, having an advisor around you that you trust and that you trust with a lot of important information is a really, really big deal. So, again, thank you. I'm very grateful for all the lessons you have taught me along the way, for sure.
Yeah, and I say no a lot. I think that's just in general. People come and everybody has an idea that, well, more revenue, more revenue, more revenue, it's automatically going to make life better.
Mhm.
But I think, and you know this now, that more revenue doesn't make life better.
Mm-mm.
More profit makes life better. And so it's good
Yes.
to grow. It's good to get bigger. It's good to
Oh,
increase revenue, but you have to do it organically. You have to do it on a slow scale. That's not sexy. The bright lights are out there, and everybody wants to go to the bright light, but
mm-hmm.
the bright light can be pretty hot.
Yep.
And so I think my role is to kind of say no, and it's a little bit like you file an insurance claim, they're going to say no, and the claim's denied. Like a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, that's my role, but I try to talk through it with people as much as anything. Like I don't say no just to say no. I say no because I kind of want to see you doing everything else right
Yeah.
before you get bigger. Because if the system it's the practice makes perfect. Well, if you're practicing bad habits, getting
They
bigger
amplify.
it's not going to make it any better.
Yeah.
So, but if you're practicing good habits and doing the right stuff, and you've got the resources and the time to do it, absolutely go for it. And I've had people on both ends. I've had people that I said I don't think I would do that, and they did it anyway. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. And I'm like, well, you got really fortunate that it worked. Okay,
Yeah.
because
The
uh,
exception, not the rule.
exception not the rule. And a good example was a daycare. A daycare, they got lucky, and during COVID, they got uh, a contract from the local hospital to take care of medical people's kids. So all the other daycares in this area, they're just nothing. They're closed.
Mm-hmm.
They're shut down. They got lucky and had this contract, and they were able to stay open and kind of be normal. Then the opportunity came to buy another location in Brandon. I'm like, let's just hold on a minute. You're still pretty young. I don't, do you have enough time to do all that? Well, they did it, and they've been very successful.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have a really good relationship. Like, yeah, I said no, I wouldn't do that. They did it anyway. They're growing. They're more successful. If they said we want to do a third location, I would probably say no, you shouldn't. But I'm a little bit more now like, yeah, you
Maybe.
did really well with the second one, so the third one's probably okay.
Well, this is interesting to me because I love that line. I had to write it down. It was so good. More revenue doesn't make life better. More profit does. I think that is like, if I could take one thing out of this episode, it's probably that, because I, as an entrepreneur, love the revenue number, but I've learned that the profit number is actually what matters more than anything else.
Yep.
What's funny is the high B marketing in its first year made more money than Lyles Barbecue did in its first 3 years from a profitability standpoint in 1 year. And that's just because I've had a lot of time working with people like you. Is more profit makes life better. That's good. So when you are looking at that daycare, for instance, like what factors from a blocking and tackling standpoint are you saying, hey, these are the things that need to be in line to where it is actually a good idea to go take a risk and expand? Because no matter what we do, expansion and growth is always going to be risky. And like we have a rule now where it's like, don't bankrupt the brand, don't bankrupt the business. I will never take a risk that if it doesn't work out, it'll bankrupt the business, because that's what happened to me, right? I've touched the stove. It's super hot. Don't do that again. So like, what are you looking at? Like what needs to be in line to mitigate the risk of expansion as much as possible from a financial standpoint? I know there's operations and people and all the things, but from a P&L balance sheet standpoint, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I think the primary thing I've seen that causes the most issue is just excessive debt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people go borrow money to do things, and you and I have had this conversation about the barbecue restaurant. And you came through the FPU class like very clearly that, the Dave message is no
Mm-hmm.
debt, no debt, no debt, no debt. If you're going to grow, it's fine, just don't do it with debt. But a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go borrow this money and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
allow me to do this much more and it's going to pay for itself, as if nothing has ever gone wrong, right?
Yep.
And I tell business owners now, like if we look back at the last 15 years and say, if 15 years ago you borrowed a bunch of money to do something, and if nothing goes wrong, you're fine. But guess what? We've had a recession, we've had
Pandemic.
a pandemic, we've had the worst unemployment. Like getting staff has been impossible the last three
Mm-hmm.
years,
Yeah.
and now hyperinflation. So if the last 15 years has taught us anything, it's that the world is a very imperfect place, and you could look at the businesses during the pandemic and see who was doing well and who wasn't. The people that were doing well, they were thinking outside the box, and they were modifying their operation to the situation, and
Mm-hmm.
not just, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing and hope for the best. So I
Yeah.
would say from a growth side, you can't do it with debt.
Mm.
And I always tell people I'm different. I'm going to tell you don't go borrow that money. You're going to talk to 10 other people and they say, oh yeah, if you can do this and make a lot more money, you should go borrow it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be the outlier and say, no, you shouldn't do that. And that's just because anything you invest in, anything you do comes with risk. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to go borrow the money, I just want you to understand the risk involved with doing that. You
Yeah.
may do it anyway, and I'm still going to work with you if you do. But my experience is people that take on a bunch of debt to try to get bigger, it normally doesn't work out. The 1 out of 10, yes, it works out, but the 9 out of 10, it
Yeah.
doesn't. And I'm like, I'm going to go with the 90% over the 10% in most situations.
That's
So
smart. Playing the law of
if
large
you have
numbers.
an yeah, if you have an operation that you can easily duplicate, you're like, we've got this figured out, we've got A figured out, we're going to take this and we're going to do B. It
Mm-hmm.
absolutely makes sense to do it if you can take you can take most of the profit from A and use that as your investment in B. But
Yeah.
don't take all the profit from A and put it in your pocket and say,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm going to go borrow a bunch of money to do B, but I need all this money from A to put in my pocket to live.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if anything goes wrong, you're in big trouble.
Yeah. I do think sometimes people aren't profitable as a business and they say, well, I'm just reinvesting all my money back into the business. And it's like, no, you have expenses out of whack. You have
Yep.
contracts out of whack. You have a bad product market fit for the service or product that you provide. There's a lot of other issues. You're just not profitable. You're not reinvesting profits. You don't have enough revenue. Like there's a lot of things happening there. I am I don't know what side of the debt coin I fall on for a business side of things. It's interesting. I'm still, I don't think I've touched that stove enough, but I will say we've borrowed no money for this current company and we're super profitable and it's a service business. So it's a little bit of a cheat code because we're selling air at the end of the day. It's not cost of goods. And, open a
Yep.
restaurant, if we use that analogy here, just because that's our commonplace, like to do it brand new out of the box, it's $400,000 or $500,000. But I do think, the way we did Lyles Barbecue was that we started with cash. We did a tent, we did a smoker, and we bought as much as we could. And then as we made money, we just spent more money buying more equipment to get more efficient. And the benefit of that was that we didn't have any experience. We had no experience in the restaurant business. The only experience any of us had was me working at Sonic in high school. And so we knew nothing. And so to borrow what a lot of people in business, when a lot of people fail, they go get a HELOC on their house, right? The home equity line of credit, and then they go all in on their business idea and quit their job. And then all of a sudden it all goes to hell. And whether you're doing a lawn care company or a restaurant or whatever, it's always a bad idea to leverage in the beginning with no experience. So I'm 100% with you on that. Like, to go borrow money when you have no track record is a really, really, really bad idea. I think I could probably be convinced that later on it's still a bad idea. I will say the big shift for me personally was that from a debt standpoint is the timeline of success. So the horizon of success, like how long do I have to become successful? I think the first business that I had a lot of pressure internally that I just put on myself to grow as fast as possible. And I was looking for any tool in front of me to go make that happen. And nowadays I'm like, I read Simon Sinek's Infinite Game, which if you haven't read is a great book. I really liked it. And it's all about, hey, business is going to exist after you're gone, and it's going to exist 100 years after you're gone. Think about how famous and popular and strong Rockefeller was. Like, he's not playing anymore. The game's over for him, but the game of business is continuing on. It's infinite. And so when you look at it on a longer time horizon, at least for me personally, there's a lot less pressure on me to go out and use high risk tools like debt to go out and do the thing. Because if you don't know this, like if you go borrow money from a bank, even the SBA or whatever, like they're going to want your personal assets for all of it. So your home that you live in is going up on the chopping block, and it's just not worth it. I think if you're patient, like you're talking about, you grow slow, you get the fundamentals right on the P&L, you get your management team in place, you do the right things. Eventually, if you're willing to grow slow, you will grow much stronger 5-10 years from now. Don't worry so much about the next 12 months. Think in 10-year blocks, not month to month increments. I think that's where a lot of small business owners get in trouble. It's where I got in trouble. So I love
Yeah,
that.
and we're not wired to go slow. I mean, just
Mm,
as a society and just culture in general, we're not
yeah.
wired to do that. We're wired like we got to go now. We got to make it big and make it pop. You know that the Bitcoin phenomenon. Well, I want to take my $1,000, make it $100,000. Yeah, occasionally those things hit.
Hmm.
There's no doubt. You can sometimes invent the right thing and you're wealthy beyond belief. But I do work with people on thinking about what's the end game here. Like when you're 65, what do you want life to look like? Do you need to really take all that risk? Can you grow it organically and grow it slow and get it right? Um, and
Yeah.
and know that you're going to achieve that goal and not just get caught up in that day to day. I need everything to be right now. I think that's where I can bring value to somebody rather than just I can do the transactions, I can cut your checks and do your deposits. It's more that high level thinking that you get at a $10 million,
Yeah.
$20 million company. But
And the price you pay for that is so cheap compared to the value that's brought from a strategic level, and somebody that's able to look at other P&Ls and all the experience you have and being able to
yeah,
condense that down and look at your specific business now. uh, Invaluable. I think that is as good a way to end an episode as possible, because I love you. I love what you do. And I need everybody that listens to this show to at least reach out and say hi, because you're a legend in my world. And you got me out of the tent. And that's something I'll forever be grateful for. Rick, take a second and tell us how we can connect with you, and then I'll let you go.
sure. Website. It's basically my brochure. I don't have a big online presence because
Hold
I
on.
don't
He's
need.
hedging right now.
I know.
He's
I
hedging
know.
right now because I'm a marketing guy, and he knows
I
I'll go
know.
look at his
I'm
site and be like,
I'm trying.
Rick, this
Yes,
site is giving me angst, like my P&L back in the day
I know.
gave you angst.
I know. Yes, I know. I know. It's from your perspective. I totally get it.
Uh-huh.
So the website is just thefinancialistllc.com. If you remember the old TV show, The Mentalist, kind of that, thefinancialistllc.com. You can reach me by email, rick at thefinancialistllc.com. I'm happy just to have a 1 hour brainstorm session. I don't charge for those. I like to meet people and hear their story and see where they're going, see if it's a good fit. I'm not a good fit for everybody. Everybody's not a good fit for me. So
Hmm. Oh, and the one thing I forgot to ask about was you're the biggest Kentucky sports fan, not just basketball and not just
Up there.
football, but all of them.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
top 20 for sure in the city of Lexington. So I got to know, how are you feeling about the Cats basketball team this year? Because I know it's
It's
been bumpy.
it's been a challenging year, a lot of losses and a lot of head scratching, but it feels like we're kind of coming together. And it's just like I tell people, if you took a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds and put them in a business together, would they be successful? Would you ever go hire 12, 20-year-old kids to help run your business? Answer is never yes. But that's not their role. Their role, just to try to get better. And I feels like we're doing that, but it's a wide open season, and that's kind of fun. It's fun as a fan of a team that's got 9 losses. Like, got just as good a shot here as a team with 2 losses. So
Hey, March Madness, anything can happen here. So the only rule is, if you're a Louisville fan, don't call Rick. He has no time for you, no
no
interest, no
time.
nothing. So, well, Rick, thanks for joining me today. This has been a great conversation. I've taken a lot of notes here, and I've got more work to do on high beam marketing side of things. So we appreciate you guys listening. If you need anything else, let us know. See you next week.